I thought that I would preface the tarot reading that I'm going to do on Neptune moving into Aries with this video, because I think a lot of people, they understand at a surface level what karma means, but I think it's kind of like the term narcissism, where it's thrown around a lot, but people, again, like I said, they kind of know the surface level definition of it, but they don't really understand maybe the depths of it. Or, maybe they do, but who knows? um, but yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about karma. So first off, and this was inspired by a channeled message I just listened to by this person I follow, and she talked about karma. And one of the things she mentioned is that karma literally means action. So in order to clear your karma, it is action that must be taken in order to do so. So it's got to be something vibrationally speaking. So for example, if you did something, like the level of, I don't know how to put this into words, but like the action that you must take to clear your karma has to be on the vibrational level of what you did to accumulate it. You know what I mean? So for example, like if you went and I always use Big L as an example. If you went and murdered someone, so the guy who murdered Big L didn't go to prison. He was out free, and for I think over 20 years. And so he obviously did not clear his karma. Clearing his karma would have meant going to the police. It would have meant turning himself in. It would have meant saying, hey, I did this shit. I pew-pewed Big L. And, that action would have been in alignment with the vibrational level of what he had done. But obviously he didn't do that. And so 20 years later, the person who pew-pewed Big L ended up dying, getting murdered in the same exact way, on the same exact street. Okay, so Big L, famous 90s rap artist, go check him out. He's incredible. He was shot in the head on Lenox Ave in New York City. And 20 years later, the same guy who was out free for these 20 years was shot in the head and murdered on Lenox Ave, the same way that he carried out the murder against Big L. So my point in saying that is to say, when you're talking about clearing your karma, you have to do an action that is, energetically speaking, in alignment on the same level to clear it as you did to accumulate it, like I just said before. So for smaller things, that could be, you cheated in a relationship. Okay, you need to go be honest to who you did that to. You need to make amends. You need to put the truth out there, and you need to take action steps to show that you are now in alignment and living within integrity. Okay, so that would be like, taking actual action steps. Here, you can look at my phone to build trust. Here, you can, just things like that to rebuild trust, but it has to be action-oriented shit. It can't just be like, oh, oops, sorry. Yeah, sorry. No, you have to show that you're sorry with your actions. Because karmic law basically works the same way that actual law works, which is that it's the same thing. It's like you've got to pay for what you did by doing something to make up for it. So yeah, that's how that works. So it can't just be like, oh, well, I do good things for people here, every now and again, but as a whole, you've abused people or something like that. And it's like, no, you have to admit to what you did. You have to go talk to that person and admit to what you did, and you have to make it right in all of the realms that you fucked up in. And that takes somebody who is willing and capable of taking accountability for themselves and for their life. Okay. And so that's why a lot of people, you'll see that they will just keep going on autopilot in life, because most people, from what I've observed, tend to not heal trauma patterns in childhood, and then they grow up, and before they even have a chance to, they repeat the same shit. So perfect example of this would be a mother who gets pregnant at 16, her daughter grows up, gets pregnant at 16, has the baby. That's a repeated karmic pattern. It's a repeated trauma pattern of not really, building yourself up enough. I mean, I guess it's epigenetics too, but also if you're talking about trauma patterns, that's a person that is not learning because they're subconsciously repeating these patterns. That's why it's important to heal before you make any major decisions in your life. That's why it's important to heal before you do things like getting married, having kids. That's why I always stress that, because I bet if you were to ask anybody that has had a kid at a younger age or a single parent, I'm sure there's a lot of things that a good parent who's wanting to heal these things is going to have to help their kids work through, because as a result of them not fully healing their own karmic patterns and wounds before moving forward with a big decision like that, pretty much. So that's also where you'll see people get into marriages that repeat the same patterns from childhood. Because people are they're not healing their own shit, and then they're just getting into these relationships which are typically karmic. And granted, I know that the word karmic is very much so overused, because really technically everything is karmic, but I do think it's split up into good karma versus bad karma. So yeah, so it's like, so basically the first karmic lessons that we are faced with come from our family of origin, okay? And it's whatever trauma, which, I mean, most people, if not probably all people, are not exempt from experiencing trauma. And so what patterns did you... Oh my gosh, I knew it. Okay, that's good. I was kind of hoping for that. That's crazy. I feel like that happens. That happens a lot. Like earlier anyway, whatever. Call it coincidence? I think not. But so the first karmic patterns that we're introduced to are in childhood, and they're from our family of origin. So it's, again, whatever you experienced as an underlying theme. Was there abuse? Was there neglect? Was there poverty? Whatever that might be. And part of clearing or healing from those trauma patterns or karmic patterns is really facing them and becoming aware of them. And this takes pretty deep healing work. This is not surface level shit. Like, oh yeah, my family was a bunch of abusive people, so I'll just, be careful. Look out, not to attract. No. It's like you have to get underneath it and look at what internalized beliefs, what things you internalized. Let's shit like that. I don't know if this guy just doesn't want to be on camera. I feel bad. But, cause he kind of, or maybe it has nothing to do with that, but, anyway, so, yeah, so basically, I'm trying to think of what the title of the video was, how karma works. So basically, like, if you don't clear these trauma patterns from your family of origin, what happens is that basically you either get stuck in a karmic cycle your whole life and you don't break free from those original patterns and they impact your life for the rest of your life, or you end up in a karmic cycle with another human being that is similar to the situation or dynamic, or you end up in a similar dynamic to that of the one you grew up in, whether it be abusive, whether it be impoverished. And that's how you know that you haven't really learned the lessons. I don't think so. Poverty is a trauma, but I'm not sure I would necessarily completely include it, because it's, I mean, it is about a mindset, but breaking generational curses when it comes to poverty, I would say, is probably extremely challenging. Not saying it's impossible, but if you change the mindset surrounding it, that's how you would heal that. Even if you do, still struggle with money, it would be healing the underlying pattern that is keeping you stuck in that lack mindset, which is usually like, people who are in these positions, obviously, because they're suffering, tend to repeat the same things. I'm suffering, I'm poor, they'll repeat that. I'm suffering, I'm poor, I'm struggling, well, you know what? The more you say that, and I know it's not just what you say, but that really does impact you. I mean, even if you look at psychology, like what you tell yourself, you are internalizing into your subconscious mind, and it is driving your behavior every day. So if you are telling yourself every day, I'm poor, I'm broke, I'm struggling, my life sucks, I can't find a job, I hate myself, well, guess what? Guess what's going to happen? More of that. You're going to get stuck in more of that. So the first step is to figure out what the pattern of trauma is and get to the bottom of it. What is driving this within me? And it definitely requires like therapy or like, self-healing work, but it's not just straightforward and surface level. Like, this is shit that has taken me, literally, I got into therapy at 12, and I would say in and out of therapy, it probably took me, and I'm still healing, granted, but 15 years. I mean, it's not like something that happens in a process, obviously, but yeah, but if you don't break free from that, you can end up stuck. And I would say a lot of people, if not most people, end up stuck unless they seek out some type of support group or some type of therapy or something that helps them to think in a different way. Because a lot of people are taught like, oh no, you can't cut off family, especially people like different cultures and backgrounds very much so stress that even more, which is concerning, because it doesn't matter who the person is. If they're not treating you well or they're not healthy, you don't have to be around that person. If that person has abused you emotionally, verbally, physically, whatever, or if the person is just manipulative, if they're just unhealthy, if they don't respect you, if they don't respect your values, you don't have to fucking be around that person. And people who haven't gone through healing might not understand that concept, that like, yes, you can cut your own parents off if you need to, if they're that shitty, and that is okay. And that is not unhealthy, it's not extreme, it's not selfish of you, no, it's not. What's fucking selfish is that you got robbed of having healthy nurturing, and you've had to sit here and suffer at the hands of these assholes who probably shouldn't have had kids. That's the true crime. That's the true issue. And basically, all I'm saying with that is because I think a lot of people get stuck on that. Like, oh my gosh, how could you cut your parents off? It's like, our parents are people too, and some people are shitty. There's the basic answer. Some people are shitty, and just because they put labels on themselves for you to call them doesn't mean shit. It just doesn't mean shit, you guys. And that's what you really have to look at, because I think, this ties into religion too, with people saying like, oh, respect your mother and father. Yeah, but you don't respect abusive people. If your mother and father is abusive, absolutely not. I'm not going to honor you because you're not honoring me. Okay? It's a two-way street. Respect goes two ways. Even when you're talking about kids, and this is where parents get confused. They think, oh my gosh, you're a child, you just shouldn't talk back, and no, they should, because they're a human being, and they deserve mutual respect. They deserve to be heard, which is probably why they're quote unquote talking back, because you're not listening. Just a thought. So yeah, I mean, all of this stuff. I'm going on rants, but basically, it's like you've got to work through these patterns and you've got to heal them. And it's not about, oh, just cutting your family off. No, you don't have to cut your family off in order to work through these karmic patterns or trauma patterns, I mean, it just depends on your personal story. You know, some people are so unhealthy that you have to cut them off. I mean, if people are straight up delusional and they're not seeing you clearly and they're telling you things that are just blatantly not true, like, yeah, you have green hair and you suck because you're, like, literally nonsensical shit. I mean, nobody's gonna sit there, and who would put up with that? You'd have to be in a delusional reality. But some people don't, it's not to that degree. So, like, it just depends on your situation. It doesn't mean you have to cut people off. A lot of times it's just setting boundaries with people and letting them know where you stand. Hey, you know what? You can't treat me that way. And you know what? You can't treat the person I'm with that way. So shut the fuck up, please. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, you can be polite and tell people to shut the fuck up. It's possible, folks. I just did it. Please, I'm asking with all due respect, if you could just please shut the fuck up. That would be great. You know, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. You just got to tell people what it is. And and that's how you break free from some of these patterns too. And that's also how you demand respect as well, because the reality of it is, people who you are people pleasing and catering to and who you just give, those people don't respect you. They don't respect you. They just know that you are easy to manipulate, basically. You know, and who gives a shit if those people who are manipulating you for your help are family members? Look at the pattern. Look at the reality. Look at the reality. And take the label away. And, you know, a mentor said this to me one time, and this was a very good way of putting it. He said, if you would not, and I know I've said this before, like, this is the third time, if you would not be friends with these people, if you would not associate with these people in your family outside of this, like, then you should not be fucking with them. Because what it comes down to is, if you don't share the same values as someone, if you don't share the same beliefs, perspectives, mindset, you're compromising just to be around certain people, compromising yourself. And that's where the karmic pattern has to be healed, is creating a sense of self-differentiation, which self-differentiation just means you are different, like defining yourself as an individual, basically, within your family of origin. Like, this is me, like, you hoes over here decided not to get married and decided to whatever, do what the fuck you're doing. Guess what? I respect myself, and so does the person I'm with, and we choose marriage because that's what we believe in. And what's the word for it? What's the word for it? Or the saying? It's not read it and weep, but it's like similar to that. It's like, you know, tough shit if these people have a problem with what you believe in, or whatever it might be. I mean, and I hate to say it, but don't make me go there. People have to also look at, like, these people might be threatened or jealous of you. Like, just because somebody perceives something a certain way doesn't mean it's wrong or bad. It just means that they're having a problem with it for whatever reason. And I hate to say it, but a lot of times it's because of insecurity that people have such a big issue with what other people are doing with their lives. Healthy people are happy for other people. They're happy for other people, even if they're not getting in their life what they want. Like, there are sometimes I go to my job and I'm upset about something before I've been crying a second before I get on. And you know what? Put that aside. Wait, where was I going with that? Why did I just say that? Because, I don't know, man. Maybe I'm supposed to pause there because I lost my train of thought. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm basically just saying, like, I don't know, man. Let me think about it. But yeah, I mean, so it's important to heal these things for yourself and your own life, because otherwise you're just going to repeat the same patterns either in your own life or in a relationship with someone else that you have. Like, if you look at your life, you will notice that in some way, shape, or form or another, the dynamic of your life right now in some way, unless you have broke these patterns, in some way probably mimics that of one or both of your parents. More than likely. In some way, shape, or form. And so, not saying that's the worst thing in the world, but the objective is not to just follow in your parents' footsteps like the baby boomers brainwashed people into thinking it was. No, I'm sorry. The objective is to create your own. To create your own footsteps, shoes, whatever. So yeah, I think a lot of people don't even know what they actually believe because they just go along with what their family of origin says is correct, or what culture says is correct, or background, or whatever. Again, please understand, all of this shit is man-made. Even culture, through experience, through human experience. It's all man-made. We made it up. So that means that you can make up something different and do something different, is my point. People are so glued to, oh, well, but I come from this background and this is just what we do. Well, have you ever considered that just what you do might not be healthy? Who gives a fuck if people have been doing it for hundreds of years? People also were had slaves for how many hundreds of years? Was that correct? No, it wasn't. That's why people stopped. So again, it's like, that may be an extreme example, but it's true. It's like violence is a part of, I'm not going to go into deets, but certain people's history, but we don't, at least I don't condone that now. Nobody sits here and says, oh no, that's acceptable because that's what their forefathers did. Their forefathers were assholes. So yeah, let them just, it's like, no, that's not a thing. Well, maybe it is for some people, but my point is, you've got to heal some of these things and change, and healing these things includes shifting your perspectives and shifting outside of what you have seen or known to be as quote unquote normal. There is no normal. Normal is not real. Nothing is real. We made it up. We literally made it up. We made concepts up. We made ideas up. We made social constructs up. We literally made everything up. So you can make something different up. That's my point. Life is not as rigid as humans' egos have made us believe it to be. That's ego. Anybody that's that glued to, one religion or one race or anybody who's like that, who's very rigid like that, has an issue with their ego. They have an overinflated ego. They're living based off of narratives, based off of shit that people have told them, based off of shit they've seen. It's all ego. And when you heal from the ego, you start recognizing that none of those things are who you are, or even define who you are. You define who you are. That's the point. That's the fucking point. So, I know that I have healed from my karmic patterns and lessons, for example, because I'm absolutely not following the same path as either of my parents. Well, in some ways I did, but I healed those things, you know what I'm saying? And so now, at the age that I'm at, both my parents were married with kids. Nothing wrong with being married with kids, but that's kind of how I look at, like, okay, I've worked through this, I've healed this. Now, it's not to say that, oh, you can't get married and have kids if you're parents, but like, I don't know how I'm trying to explain it, but it's like, I made my own decisions. Even though I had a blueprint of what people expected of me, I ultimately was more concerned of what I expect from myself, and also what do I want my life to look at, and also how do I define happiness. And for me, I define happiness by just having peace, just having joy, having peace, joy, freedom. I don't like to be around a lot of people, so it's just, that's part of breaking free from those patterns too, is basically the self-differentiation aspect, which is, who are you? Discovering who you are. Who are you outside of these things that society has told you you are, outside of these labels, outside of these boxes that your family has expected you to fit into? Who are you outside of that? Because really, you're none of those things. Who are you outside of skin color? Who are you outside of your hair color? Who are you outside of the background you come from? Who are you outside of the religion that you were raised in? Who are you outside of the confines of the childhood patterns that you were brought up in? Who are you? Because who you are is underneath all that. And that's where human suffering comes in, because we really have to understand that we do create our suffering. We really do. Even in the midst, I mean, because some people might be like, what are you talking about? I grew up in abuse, or I was, really victimized. Yes, of course, you did not create that. I mean, when you get older, the more you think about the past, or ruminate on the past, or think about, how you could have acted, or how you, maybe if you did this, or that's what I'm talking about. Part of healing is accepting that the ego can't always get what it wants. You can't take back the past. You cannot change what happened to you, but you can change how you view it. You can change your attitude towards it. You can change how you feel about it. You can change your perspective. Did I say that already? You can't control the past, but what can you control, and what can you change now? And so it really is about action. But it starts with going within yourself. It starts with going inward and really figuring out who you are outside of who you've been told that you are, outside of who you've been told you should be, outside who you've been told that, like, I don't know, if you come from a certain background and everybody believes that you should be married or not married or whatever, who gives a fuck? What do you think? How do you feel outside of that? Because there is a way that you feel outside of that if you really tap into digging deeper into yourself. And sometimes your beliefs might actually align with that, but a lot of times you'll find that you have your own rendition of it, Like for me, I don't give a shit about marriage, but I do want a long-term commitment. I don't give a shit about marriage, but I do want something stable. You know what I mean? So it's like my family, they believe in all that shit. Well, that's, anyway, so it's kind of like that. It's like, if you come from a family where nobody believes in that, well, maybe you believe in putting a ring on your girlfriend or boyfriend's finger and, at least having a spiritual sense of marriage or togetherness. You know what I mean? Like coming up with your own ideas about how you want to exist in this world and who you want to be outside of the judgments of other people. Because, yeah. And I think also looking at what major patterns in childhood came up. Was there people pleasing and codependency because there was abuse and alcoholism? Was there enabling because of that? Was there just negligence and, your parents were just not emotionally available, but they weren't abusive? Was it everybody was working all the time? So again, a negligent situation, but nobody was like directly harming you or saying, you know what I mean? So like, you got to look at that and then look at what patterns you've developed as a result of that. Usually people who are neglected can tend to develop avoidant attachment styles where they become extremely self-sufficient because that's what they were taught growing up, is that that's how you have to be. That's how you survive in this world, because they were neglected and nobody else was going to do it for them. So shit like that. But again, this can require getting a therapist, but Not always. During my 20s, I did a lot of, I had a couple therapists, but I did a lot of self-healing, which really included me sitting with myself, sitting with myself a lot, and not running from my demons, not running from my pain, being with it, being with myself, really truly getting to know myself. But in order to get to know yourself, you have to feel the pain of those those childhood wounds. You have to feel it. You have to acknowledge it and release it. That's the first part of it. And a lot of people don't even get past that or to that because it's too painful. People don't want to experience the pain again, but you have to understand that's a part of the healing process. You feel the pain again so you can find a new way to relate to it, to look at it. Your adult mind is much more equipped to handle some of these traumas that you may have gone through. So it requires maybe some inner child work too, which is like, again, maybe something a therapist, I can get on here and explain it to you guys and stuff like that. I don't have a problem doing that. But that's what helped me. And, yeah, but the healing journey is not a comfortable one. It's never been. My life has been so uncomfortable, but that now I enjoy change, like, so much. Like, I enjoy it's not that I enjoy pain. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I enjoy challenges, I don't mind it. So you become acquainted with it. You become acquainted with yourself. And a lot of people don't do that because they don't spend time just with themselves. I'm telling you, I would sit for hours by myself. Hours, days, weeks, months. We're not talking one day here and there. No, we're talking day in, day out. I was not hanging out with friends. Well, that's not true. I was doing that. I was doing that shit. But a majority of what I was doing was the healing work, which required me being with me, myself, and I. What the fuck is going on with that dog? And why are you like, this person is weird. Like, sorry, this is just kind of odd. Like, there's a guy that like walked ahead of him, and you would think like the dog was like trying to come at him, and you would think, not in a bad way, the dog liked the person that was walking by, but it was like you would just think the guy would have waited a second. Anyway, whatever, who cares? So, and I probably said that really loud, and who cares? But anyway, so it's really just sitting with that, sitting with yourself, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, pretty much. And just feeling your feelings, crying, sitting in the mirror, looking at yourself, literally. Like, I would do a lot of that, like looking in the mirror work, talking to myself in the mirror, talking things through, processing things with myself. Saying affirmations, just sitting with myself, and really became my own best friend. And that's what you have to do. Trying to think if there's anything else with the karma shit or the karmic patterns. Because when I say karmic patterns, it really is trauma patterns. But the reason I say karmic is because in the spiritual world, it's trauma patterns, and it's related to what you do with those trauma patterns. So the karmic pattern part is like you acting those trauma patterns out, So these are all some of the things that you can do, but in order to, oh shit, I'm gonna put this out. So I'm gonna put this out. In order to really, be the, okay, I totally played that off. I played that off, folks. Totally played that one off. But, okay, let me get back to what I was saying. So, yeah, you've got to really sit with yourself. You've got to look at these underlying patterns that are driving your behavior. A lot of people do like people pleasing or codependency, you know, just doing things to keep the peace with people, kind of like, I don't know, walking on eggshells. So it requires getting, like I said, getting comfortable with yourself so that you can build up the courage and self-esteem to confront others, basically. Because when you understand your own self-esteem and or your own self-worth, when you understand your own self-worth, sorry, that threw me off because that person made eye contact with me. When you know your own self-worth, you build this inner knowing and this unbreakable confidence that pretty much makes you, my bad, fearless towards anybody. Pretty much. I mean, yeah, I definitely have found that, because you're gonna need the courage and the confidence to set boundaries with people, especially if you're talking about people who are abusive in some way, shape, or form, or manipulative. You're gonna have to build up that your confidence, your self-esteem, and the courage to really stand up and lay into a bitch, you know. And a lot of people, especially with their family of origin, I think this is pretty common, that people you're closer to, it can be harder to set boundaries with, or to speak up and speak out against them. So that's why it requires that confidence, that self-esteem, and that ability to self-differentiate, to individualize yourself outside of those people. Because the reality of it is, when you grow up and you move away out of your childhood home and shit like that, like, you're not the person you were. And in order for people to respect you as a whole, you need to basically let it be known who you are now. And you have to so like with your family of origin, it's like, yeah, you may have been in the same position they were in the past, but say one person gets stuck in their hometown and the other one moves away and goes and like experiences life, and the other person doesn't, well, now you're a completely different person than that person. Now there are a lot of differences there. And so, like, that's a healthy part of growing into a well-rounded adult, is getting to a point where you can identify yourself outside of your family of origin. And you have let it be known, hey, this is what I believe. Like, I get that you guys believe that, but this is what I believe now. So take it or leave it, bitch. I don't care. You know, you really got to let people know and stand up for yourself. It's about self-advocacy. And with this Neptune in Aries energy, it's the perfect time to do it, because really, I think the thing that people don't understand too about karmic patterns or karma and some of these like transits and where the planets are at the time that some of these things take place is that that can influence the energy. And so, like, for example, with this Neptune in Aries, people who haven't closed out karmic cycles, those karmic cycles are probably going to ramp up in tension. The tension is going to increase. And that's because now Neptune is not in Pisces, which is more like, oh yeah, go with the flow. Yeah, let's just go with the flow, which probably made it easier for people to stay in some of these patterns of codependency and enmeshment because it was just kind of like, yeah, let me just go along and just be nice to people and get along, kind of go along to get along. It's a very, I don't want to say passive energy, but it's a very subtle energy. And so now that we're moving Neptune into Aries, it's a very direct, straightforward energy. There's no question. I mean, Neptune, the planet in and of itself, leaves room for question, but with it being in Aries, it's going to be much harder for people to deny reality in this era, basically. So what you're going to find is a lot of confrontations happening, but confrontations ramping up, especially with people who have not healed these patterns. So that's something to look out for. But karma ultimately just means action, and it is basically, and I'm gonna have to explain this in a certain type of way because it's like, I'll explain it in a second. Because like karmic patterns, doesn't mean that, because like a lot of people think, oh, karma, it's like, oh, you bring that on yourself. And it's like, so some would say that like these karmic patterns that pop up in childhood are because you've lived a previous life and it's carrying over from a previous life. And, you know, some would say it has nothing to do with that and it's just trauma, and then the karma is really what ensues once you get old enough to act differently, you know? So there could be various beliefs surrounding that. But I will say, this is how you heal that. I don't want to go on for too long because I want people to actually watch the video, but that is how you heal these trauma patterns, these karmic patterns, in order to level up and be on more of a conscious level of interacting. Because, you know, it's kind of like, you can't interact with certain people if you have not healed these karmic wounds, because you're not, like, people who have healed them are on they're on a higher energetic vibration and level. So if you have one person who has healed from these wounds and one person who's still stuck in a karmic cycle, that's not going to mesh. It's not going to work because one person has already learned these lessons and they have enacted them, and the other person has not. So if you're still stuck in a karmic cycle, which means you're still going round and round with your family of origin with the same patterns and the same ways of interacting since childhood, then that's where you're gonna stay stuck at. And usually in the same dynamic with which you were brought up in, until you choose to take conscious action to heal that. And that requires courage and that requires healing. And so that's why a lot of people find this challenging, because it is in some ways. I mean, it's painful. It's painful to face this shit, but you know what? It is worth it, and I am a living testament to that. I am telling you, it is, I can't explain the feeling of freedom that comes from breaking free from those patterns and recognizing that you did not play out the same patterns in a subconscious manner. I mean, really, it is an accomplishment. So yeah, that's what I would say as far as healing karmic patterns. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I'm going to do a tarot reading later on the different karmic patterns and shit like that for Neptune and Aries. But until then,